When I met Ryan Holle at Florida's Walton Correctional Institution, he was optimistic and spirited. Even for a man whose destiny was life in prison, convicted for the murder of his friend, 18-year-old Jessica Snyder. She was viciously beaten to death with the butt end of a rifle. Holle's sentence in connection with that murder, one stop short of lethal injection.
When I was convicted, I was given natural life without the possibility of parole.
And when you hear how that daunting life sentence came to be, you may feel as outraged as many of the nation's respected legal minds.
He didn't participate in the actual crime.
He never left his house, he was sleeping.
Then again, maybe you won't.
Have you ever lost sleep over the case?
No.
The story begins, like so many we follow, with a portrait of innocent youth.
He was a good kid. I mean, he was studious. He didn't even open a book. He got straight A's.
Growing up, Ryan's mom, Sylvia, then a single parent, joined the Navy just to keep her children in a disciplined environment.
My kids were raised on Navy bases around the world.
Were you raised to respect law enforcement?
We never had any trouble with law enforcement.
When Sylvia married longtime love John Garnett,
Yep, that's one happy family there.
Ryan happily gave his mother away. Ryan's friend Jessica Snyder was a guest at the wedding, but 4 days later, her skull would be bludgeoned to pieces.
It was one of the worst I've ever seen.
But why is Ryan Holle paying the ultimate price for Jessica's murder when even the prosecutor admits this?
Ryan didn't plan this.
No, he didn't plan it.
I absolutely had no idea. How could I get in trouble for something that I was never at the scene of the crime?
To understand this troubling case, we rewind to the night before Jessica's violent death. Ryan threw a party at the Pensacola, Florida home he shared with his sister Heather and Ryan's roommate, Billy Allen. Billy was dating Jessica, who was one of the party guests that night.
Did you like Jessica?
Yeah, she was very, very sweet. Everybody who I knew from the people coming in and out of the house seemed to know her and like her and didn't think anything bad of her.
As for Ryan's roommate, Billy Allen, well, Heather wasn't exactly feeling the love.
He just always seemed sketchy to me.
There were even rumors that Billy not only dated Jessica, but had a fling going with her mother, Christine, as well.
So it's possible that Billy was dating Jessica and the mother?
Well, that's possible. But I do remember during the course of the investigation that came out.
Billy had revealed to a few friends that Jessica's mom kept a safe in her home.
They believed that there was $20,000 in cash in the safe.
Which brings us back to the night of Ryan's party, where a sinister plan is hatched. It's a raucous affair and the booze is flowing hard.
How drunk would you say that you were?
I would say I probably had between 6 to 10 drinks, a mixture of rum and Coke.
Ryan goes to bed before the party ends, but then someone he barely knows enters his bedroom around 7 o'clock the following morning.
I was woken up by Donnie Williams, and he had asked me if he could borrow the keys to my car.
Did you know Donnie Williams?
No, ma'am. I had met him briefly before, but I didn't know him.
Ryan refused to give Donnie Williams his car keys, but when Ryan's roommate Billy came in with the same request, Ryan had a change of heart.
And what do you say?
And I tell him yes, basically,
Why?
because I had trusted him.
While Ryan and Billy Allen are discussing the keys, Donnie and 2 other men Ryan hardly knows enter the room. Ryan is groggy and still drunk, but he overhears their conversation.
And they're all talking and they want your car to
Yes,
go
ma'am.
do something.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know at that point what they want to do?
It was a mixture of 2 different things. They had spoken about going over to William Allen's on and off girlfriend's house, Jessica Snyder, to steal a safe. And then they also talked about going to get something to eat.
Then, according to a police interview with Ryan, the men asked him if they could borrow some bandanas.
In his statement, he acknowledged that they were talking about going over there and doing, in his words, a John Wayne. and they were asked for bandanas.
Ryan tells the men where they can find the bandanas. Then he overhears more conversation. The would-be bandits discuss who might be at the Snyder home when they pull off the heist. They knew Jessica's parents would be gone, but what about Jessica, Billy's own girlfriend?
They thought she might be there, the girl. There had been some discussion in the presence of Ryan Holle what they would do if Jessica was there.
Mm-hmm. Which was?
One of them was that they might have to knock her out. They might have to put her to sleep. This is the language they used.
Ryan tells me the conversation barely registered with him, and what little did, well, he just didn't believe.
There was no reality in my mind that this was something that could actually happen. Absolutely not.
It's the early morning hours in the small waterfront town of Pensacola, Florida. After a night of heavy partying, Ryan Holle had agreed to let roommate Billy Allen borrow his car.
Had you ever said no when he asked to borrow your car?
No, ma'am.
You were good buddies.
Yes, ma'am.
Ryan admits he had overheard Billy and others talk about burglarizing the home of Jessica Snyder, Billy's girlfriend. But in my prison interview with Ryan, he insists he never thought the plan was real.
I didn't take it serious at all.
At the time?
When they had said that they were going to go do that, I was like, I don't really.
You didn't think this would really happen?
No, ma'am. I've never been involved with anything like that in my whole life.
Ryan also overheard the conspirators plan to knock out Jessica if she happened to be home during the heist. Something else Ryan's family says he didn't believe.
She was dating the guy that was borrowing the car. Why would he think they would do anything to her? So he didn't think anything of it.
But the plan was real, very real. While Ryan laid in bed trying to shake off a hangover and get some sleep, Billy is behind the wheel of Ryan's car, on his way to Jessica's a mile and a half away, to steal her mother's safe containing money and jewelry. 3 accomplices were in on the heist: Donnie Williams, Charles Miller, and Jermon Thomas, veritable strangers to Ryan. When the crew first arrives at Jessica's home, the plan is put on pause. There's a snag.
When they got there, though, her younger sister was there. So they were waiting for the sister to leave to go to school.
While they're waiting, Billy's cell phone rings. It's Ryan.
When I called, I was, where's my car? What are you guys doing?
And what does he say to you?
That they were at Jessica Snyder's house. And that they were waiting for the sister to leave.
At that point, did you realize this was a reality?
No, ma'am.
You still didn't?
Still didn't.
So what did you say to him?
I remember that he said he had to go, and he ended up hanging up the phone.
Ryan falls back asleep. Meanwhile, at Jessica's house, her little sister has finally left for school. The heist is back in motion. Billy waits in the car while the other 3 bust their way into Jessica's home and head for the safe in a back bedroom. Jessica is there, and she's terrified.
Apparently she was screaming because they had broken into the house.
While the others are scrambling to get the safe and looking for other items to steal, Charles Miller remembers that plan to knock out Jessica if she got in the way. That plan, evil as it was, would evolve into something seemingly psychotic.
Charles Miller removed a shotgun that was on the wall in the house.
That was her father's.
To shut her up, he started hitting her. And then he just kind of snapped and just kept pounding and pounding and pounding on her face and her head with the shotgun.
The butt even broke off of the rifle. He was hitting her so hard.
He tossed the gun in the kitchen sink. But now the others are panicked and in a rush to get the safe into Ryan's car. Once it's lifted into the back seat, the burglars race back to Ryan's house, plowing through a fence to get to the backyard.
I hear a loud bang, basically. And when I get up to look to see what it is, my car is basically sitting in my backyard. I seen them jumping out of the vehicle, and they basically took a safe out of the back seat and put it on the ground.
What was your reaction to that?
Oh my God. I said, what's going on? What are you doing?
The crew uses every tool they can find to try to bust open the safe.
Charles Miller, he has blood on his clothes. And I was like, I don't want no part of this. You guys need to leave. And he said, shut up.
But it's then that Ryan learns of the vicious beating.
The one person who actually did say something to me that made me realize that something had happened to Jessica was when Donnie said 1 minute, it's like I could see her head there, and then the next minute I couldn't.
What did you say?
And he had started crying.
Before Ryan had even a minute to absorb the horrific murder, police showed up at his house. All the banging trying to get the safe cracked piqued the interest of a suspicious neighbor who had called the cops. Now the long arm of the law had its reach on everyone.
When they had first came into the residence, they basically told everybody to freeze. And what they did was they put everybody in handcuffs, and they had us sitting in the dining room.
It didn't take them very long, did it?
No, ma'am, absolutely not.
Ryan is confident he's not a guilty party in this misguided turned murderous heist. He cooperates with the police.
I wasn't involved at all, and I didn't even have any part of what they did to her.
I was never being deceptive or anything like that. I was really just trying to do the right thing by telling them what had happened that night.
But Ryan's cooperation would come back to haunt him.
This wasn't a quick shot to the head. She suffered. Can you imagine being beaten to death? A teenager?
The ghastly bludgeoning of an innocent teenage girl. It was a murder case Florida cops had little problem piecing together. And not without Ryan Holle's help.
The record shows that Holle fully cooperated with the police and told them what he knew and who else was involved in Jessica's murder.
Even though police know Ryan wasn't involved in the heist, the murder, and wasn't even at the crime scene, and simply lent his car keys to a roommate. Stunningly, he was charged with the murder of Jessica Snyder, along with the 4 other defendants.
We've run into some problems here, and I want to tell you that we've got a warrant for your arrest.
They basically say, we think you have something more to do with the crime that happened, so we're going to arrest you on an open count of murder.
It's a controversial and some say antiquated law called the felony murder rule. In some states, when people participate in certain serious crimes like a robbery or burglary or rape, and a person is murdered during the commission of that crime, everyone is held responsible for the death.
So everyone is treated like the trigger man,
Correct.
even if they didn't pull the trigger.
Absolutely.
But how is Ryan Holle responsible? Ryan is about to learn the law the hard way.
You knew the burglary was going to happen.
I wasn't involved at all, and I didn't even have any part of what they did to her.
Exactly.
And I didn't have any part when they came back to the house and they did what they did to the safe.
Exactly. But see, the problem is this. If it wasn't for the burglary being committed,
then nothing would have happened.
He knew when they left his house with his car that they were going to use it to participate or to commit the burglary, and also that if Jessica was there, she might be harmed.
But he also told investigators many times that he didn't think they were serious.
Yeah, he said that. And that's up to the jury to decide.
The felony murder rule requires that a person must have something called conscious intent, meaning that Ryan had to fully expect the burglary to take place.
You can't just be aware of something. You have to intend that the crime be committed.
That's correct. Someone has to commit a crime, and someone has to be killed during the course of the crime, and you have to have intended to assist them in the underlying offense.
But as far as Ryan Holle is concerned, there was no intent, conscious or otherwise.
Had I truly known, I would have never, ever, ever allowed that to happen.
You wouldn't have given your keys.
No, ma'am.
But prosecutors were going by the book on this one. Ryan was facing murder.
I was absolutely stunned.
In this particular case, he did nothing. He wasn't involved in planning the case. He wasn't involved in receiving any of the goods afterwards. He told them he didn't want anything to do with it.
A lot of people think it's harsh.
Do you think it's harsh?
I don't have an opinion about it.
You must have an opinion.
No, I really don't.
What prosecutor David Rimmer did have to offer was a plea deal of just 10 years in state prison for Ryan's role in the case. Ryan was the only defendant offered a deal.
I was willing to do that. I was willing to give him a break.
But the Holle family rejected the offer, and Ryan's stepfather blames himself.
I told him not to take it. If he would have taken it, he'd be home right now.
But John Garnett says he had good reason for rejecting the plea deal at the time, blaming this woman for that ill-fated decision. Sharon Wilson, Ryan's attorney. According to Ryan's stepdad, Wilson practically guaranteed a slam-dunk victory if Ryan went to trial.
She made me feel very comfortable that he would be coming home.
She told you not to take the plea deal.
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
She said that there was no way that I would be convicted at trial. Me and my family were so certain that my mother and my father, my stepfather, actually brought a change of clothes and had it in the truck.
You were expecting to go home.
Yes, ma'am.
But Sharon Wilson tells Crime Watch Daily it was Ryan's own decision to reject the plea deal, and that she knew defending Ryan was going to be a challenge under the felony murder rule.
I knew that it was going to be difficult. We had really tough facts, we had a sympathetic victim, and then we had laws that unfortunately we could not change before the trial. We were stuck with that.
But worse yet, claims Ryan's family, Wilson never explained the concept of felony murder.
She never said to you, if he does not get acquitted, he will go to prison for life without the possibility of parole. She never told you that.
I can't speak to what they understood. It is very hard to wrap your mind around that someone can be convicted under those circumstances. I don't think the jurors understood it.
And when Ryan went to trial,
she never objected to anything. She never called a witness except for Ryan.
Ryan's entire trial took just 1 day.
This was just like a ram, bam, thank you, ma'am, get her done deal in 1 day.
The families always say that. Basically, when somebody gets convicted, it becomes the attorney's fault, in spite of the bad facts.
It seemed over before it started. Not just the trial, but Ryan Holle's young life. He was found guilty and sentenced to die behind bars.
It hurt. It hurt. I just couldn't believe it, that now my life's gone forever, and I'm gonna go to prison.
Do you have any regrets over charging him with the first-degree murder?
No, I really don't. I mean, I know it seems cold, but it was his decision to reject the plea offer.
The jury had an option of finding Ryan guilty of the lesser charges of second-degree murder or manslaughter. But based on their verdict, jurors felt Ryan needed the harshest punishment.
There was no car, there was no crime. No crime, no murder.
Despite the devastating sentence, Ryan has spent countless hours teaching himself law and essentially writing his own appeals, all of which have been denied. But then, a flicker of hope for Ryan. In this document, obtained exclusively by Crime Watch Daily, Florida's Office of Executive Clemency, quote, issued a favorable recommendation on your application for a commutation of sentence. Ryan is granted a hearing before the Clemency Board.
He acknowledges his responsibility and has expressed remorse for the tragic consequences of his actions.
And finds a sympathizer in Florida Governor Rick Scott.
Clemency is an opportunity to temper justice with mercy.
But Ryan's opponents were not so merciful.
He had them go do the dirty work. He knew they were going to beat a teenager with a shotgun.
He's not acted at all like an adult and more like a child that got his arm caught in the cookie jar and denies he took a cookie. He is our comparison to Charles Manson.
Ryan's mother makes her impassioned plea for compassion.
I would give my life today if I could bring Jessica back. Ryan would give his life. We are so sorry about what happened to Jessica and her family.
In the end, Ryan would not get freedom, but he would get a compromise.
I move to commute Ryan Holle's life sentence to 25 years imprisonment followed by 10 years probation.
Ryan Holle will someday taste freedom.
So what would you like to say about the fact that your sentence was commuted?
It's a blessing in the sense that I know that I'm not gonna have to spend the rest of my life in prison, but it still hurts that I'm gonna have to do another 7 years and I'll have spent 21 years and 3 months of my life incarcerated.
Back here is where we have already put a room for Ryan.
Unless he's granted a new hearing, Ryan's family won't be welcoming him home until 2024. For now, though, he knows exactly what he must do just to survive.
This deputy When he was walking me down to the holding cell underneath the courthouse, he says, Mr. Holle, if I could tell you one thing about what you're about to go through, he's like, just don't let prison turn you into an animal.
We're joined by attorneys Misty Maris and Bob Bianchi. Thank you for being here. Bob, how can somebody be convicted if he wasn't even at the crime scene?
Chris, this case has been so overblown with regard to feeling bad for this guy. If you're going to look to rape somebody, burglary, armed robbery, and you are a participant in aiding and abetting it all in that felony, you are just as responsible as the person who actually killed the person.
He lent his car to the wrong person. That's what he's guilty of. The fact that he was sentenced to life in prison is a gross injustice.
Well, 12 jurors disagreed with you and found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Let me just finish. No car, no murder.
I knew you were going to bring this up, Bob. You think that the one thing that stood in the way of this group of people trying to rob this woman was transportation?
It doesn't have
they
to
would have
stand
gotten
in
there anyway.
There's something to say about that. No car, no murder. They can't get over there.
Not to be too back to law school, but yes, that's a proximate cause theory, meaning anything that's set off in that chain, you could face the felony murder rule. There's a different theory out there that limits the felony murder rule, and that means that you have to be proven as an accomplice to the murder.
And you are an accomplice when you assist in giving the vehicle for which is used to go and commit a violent felony and potentially bandanas and potentially planned it, even though you weren't there, doesn't mean that you didn't set into motion and assist
Bob,
felony in which somebody was killed.
The jury agrees with you, but when you're talking about a clemency proceeding, you're talking about justice.
You know what makes me laugh, Chris? I've been doing prosecution for half of my career, and everyone's a liberal and feels bad for guys like this until their mother, their father, their brother, or their sister is killed, and then they want everyone who's responsible, rightly so, to go to jail for felony murder, and that's what happened here.
There's another opportunity here to right a wrong, a gross injustice as far as proportionality.
Nothing is clean in a situation like this.